Hey, so I wanted to do this series on spiritual health and the value of spiritual development. Because we know physical health is good. And we're getting more recognition and more awareness into mental health. But I want to make sure we don't forget about spiritual health because that has been key for me in my life to keep me going each day. And so I just wanted to have a discussion on spiritual health and talk about the practical uses for it and how it can help you and me in our lives. And so one of the first things that came to my mind is this story. Because I tend to take lessons from different situations, good or bad, that happen in my life. Because I truly believe if something is allowed to happen, my creator allows something if my creator allows something to happen in my life, it must be a lesson in it for me. So I'm determined to get that lesson because I want to grow as much as possible. So I thought about this time where I was violated, and the lesson in it truly helps me keep going each day. And so there was a time where I remember I gave this presentation somewhere, right? And this guy, he saw my presentation. And, he talked to me later. He was like, yo, I think you'd be good for this opportunity in South Africa, to give a presentation, to give different presentations there and to educate the people on this thing and that thing, right? And I was excited because I'm like, wow, opportunity to travel outside the country again. And to not just travel outside the country, but to be a service outside the country, to do some work in an area where I'm good at, right? Like I love speaking and helping others and being able to do that. So I'm like, yeah, I'm interested in finding more out about the opportunity. He said, cool. He sent me an email. It was like, yo, he sent an email talking about exactly why he wanted to meet and, what he wanted to talk about, right? And everything was basically strictly business. But he wanted to meet up because, if he's going to put my name out there as a suggestion for this position, he wanted to make sure he has a close connection with me and be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, they tell me you messing up. What's going on? My name is attached to you, right? So I understood that. So he was like, yo, let's have dinner. He invited me to this restaurant in Beverly Hills. And it was a fancy restaurant. The prices on that menu was crazy. I was glad he was paying for it, right? Because I could barely afford a glass of water from that place, right? So we having a conversation and things going well and everything. But I could tell by the conversation, like, okay, he's starting to get a little bit more personal and, kind of digging in a little deeper, kind of moving past the business aspect and kind of crossing the line a little bit. But I'm like, just whatever. Like, I'm doing my best not to think too much about it. So I'm just enjoying the moment, enjoying the conversation, getting to know each other. And then we ended up going back to his place afterwards, right? We just continue talking. And I'm like, I'm not concerned. I know my boundaries and everything like that. Like, so I can always steer things the other way. But it was a time where he was, he kept like scooting closer. We was like on a couch like this and he kept like kind of scooting closer. And like at this point, he kind of being more forward in his conversation. And I'm like swerving every which way. Like, no, like I made it clear, like I'm not interested. But that did not stop his advances. He started putting his hand like on my leg or whatever. And I'm like trying to like scoop my leg over, like, what you doing? Like, nah, I'm good. And I kept saying no, right? But he kept putting his hand like on my leg and like doing these touches on me and things like that. So it got to the point where I was just like really feeling uncomfortable. And I told him, like, okay, about to go home, right? And at this time, I was homeless, sleeping in my car. He didn't know this at the time, but I was sleeping in my car. So when I said I'm about to go home, I was just gonna go in my car and park somewhere and sleep, right? And so, as we get up and I'm walking towards the door and he's walking with me, I'm still trying to keep the conversation, focus on business or casual, like kind of steer it away from where he was leading it. And he was like, as I was walking towards the door, he was like, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And just those words of him saying that, it felt like he took his nails and just like scraped it across the blackboard and was like screeching and dug into my mind. And he just kept saying that again as I'm getting closer to the door. He kept saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And he just kept repeating that. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And every time he said and every time he repeated, those words just kind of like dug into me, right? And those words still stick to my head to this day. And I'm like, I thought to myself, like during that time, I didn't say anything to him, but I thought to myself, I was like, he's right. It's not what you know, it's who you know. But at the time, I was very clear that I knew God. I knew my creator. I knew the one who created me, right? And so he's right. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And I know God because of my relationship with God. I was able to keep walking away knowing I was risking an opportunity that I absolutely wanted, right? But I refused to do something that I just did not want to do. And so at that moment, I remember thinking, he's right. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And I know God. And as I reflected on that moment, right, of just clarity, like just being glad that I know somebody who I know has my back, right? I know my creator. I know God has my back. And that I could walk away from this situation, but he could make another way for me, setting me up for a better situation, right? So I was clear on that. But it takes me back to a time where, it takes me back to one of my favorite Bible stories with Moses. And Moses facing the burning bush and him hearing the voice of God. And God is telling Moses to do all these things, and Moses was like, okay, who do you want me to tell them that you are? Who do you want me to say sent me? And God was like, I am. Tell them I am sent you. God said, I am that I am. And so going back to this moment where I was homeless, sleeping in my car for, at this point, it was like over a year now, probably like around a year and a half, sleeping in my car, barely have money, right? Being skimpy on what I eat because I can't afford it. I will park somewhere and catch the train to different places because it was much cheaper than having to get gas. I was at a point where because it was too hot to stay in my car, I was hanging out in the libraries or food courts, just hanging out there so I have somewhere cool to kind of spend my day at, right? And just going to this moment where, I'm going after my dream and I'm looking for opportunities and working to fight for my dream and to go towards these goals, but I'm in this situation where I got to shower at the gym, I'm sleeping in my car, can't eat what I want to eat, can't go out and hang out with friends because that stuff costs money usually, and I'm just in this position, and I'm thinking about, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I know I am. I know God. I know God. And using the name that God gave Moses, I know the power in knowing God. I know the power in knowing that I am. I know God. I know that I am worthy. I know that I am capable. I know that I am resourceful. I know that I am worthy. I know that I am brilliant. I know that I am creative. I know that I am enough. So it became clear to me in this situation where he was saying something, it's not what you know, it's who you know, to get me, to tempt me to do something that he wanted me to do, that I did not want to do. He was tempting me to turn my no into a yes. But because I know God, because I know that I am, I was able to walk away. And so I learned at that moment the value of knowing who you are. And in knowing who you are and knowing I am does nothing but bring me closer to God. Because I think a lot of times we get this idea that God and I are separate, when I think we're so much closer than we even realize. God introduced himself as I am. And what do we say? How do we describe ourselves? Nothing but I am. I am. So every time I say I am speaking to the God in me. I am speaking to my Creator, remembering who made me. And so I think it's important for us to recognize and focus on who we are, to focus on I am. Because we lose power when we focus on who they are, what he said, what she said, what they think they doing. When we think about that, there's no power in that. There's no power in they are. But the power is in I am. So when I focus on I am, I'm able to do things regardless of what my situation is. Even though I'm homeless, even though I was struggling, even though I was hungry, because I knew who I am, that does not change regardless of what my situation is, regardless of what I might have been through, regardless of how I may even be feeling at the moment. I may be feeling worthless at the moment, but let me remind myself, wait, I am priceless. I am irreplaceable. I am worthy. I am enough. And so all I want to say is, no matter what situation you're in, no matter what you're going through, remember who you are. Just remind yourself, it's not what you know. It's not what situation you're in. It's not how much money is in your bank. It's about who you are. It's about I am, and knowing I am regardless of my situation.
TheTire.com